What I'm about to tell you guys is next, okay? Dun, 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 set the stage. The thing you're about to see next is, in my opinion, this is the single most important, this is the single linchpin to all of exercise physiology, okay? This next thing you're about to see, okay? This is it. All responses to exercise derive from this. Our ability to exercise derives from this. Training adaptations derive from this, okay? That's fine. Just like go away. And that thing that is the linchpin is called the cross-bridge cycle. Okay? It's called the cross-bridge cycle. So unfortunately, this is going to be something that you guys are just going to have to memorize, and you're just going to have to memorize the particular steps and the things that go on here. Okay? I don't often say you need to know this whole entire pathway and things in this class, but this thing is so important that this is one you're just going to have to memorize. Okay? Now, normally on this day in class, we sort of politely, after asking permission, demonstrate this by grabbing onto each other's arms and doing certain like pulling exercises and things like that. Not doing that today, so I'm just going to have to, my example is going to be a little bit different. Okay? But the idea behind the cross-bridge cycle is the primary things in a muscle that let us generate force and let us generate movement are the interaction of actin and myosin together. Okay? Actin and myosin together. So, when myosin binds onto actin, and I will demonstrate, here's an actin filament with my arm. I've got a thick filament down here that has myosin. My hand is the head of the myosin. When it wants to bind onto the actin, okay? When this happens, this complex that is formed with myosin bound is called a cross bridge, okay? We must form cross bridges. We must form them in order to generate force in a muscle, okay? So it is this formation of a cross bridge that allows muscles to contract. It allows us to walk, okay? It is this, once we do the contraction, that drives changes in breathing and blood flow and heart rate and everything else cascades down after this happens, okay? So to me, this is the linchpin. This is the thing upon which everything else is built, okay? So I'm going to walk you guys through what is going to happen in some instances here, okay? So remember that the thick filaments, the myosin heads, okay, are going to have an enzyme on them that is meant to split ATP. Also, the myosin head can change its shape, if you will, okay? And so as soon as we pull tropomyosin out of the binding site on actin and the myosin binds in, okay, it binds and it is going to be in what we're going to term a high energy configuration. So the myosin is sitting there, okay, and it grabs on. Well, that happens, there is a molecule of ADP and a molecule of inorganic phosphate that are bound onto myosin right here, okay? So once this happens, binding happens, then the head of the myosin molecule is going to tilt, okay? And depending upon on which side of a sarcomere we are, it's going to tilt in either left or right or kind of in one direction. In this instance, the myosin head is going to tilt to the left, okay? Which is what you can see here. The process of the head tilting, and by tilting it's going to drag or pull the actin along with it, is called a power stroke, okay? That's called a power stroke. when you get movement in a muscle, at least when you get a shortening movement in a muscle, what you are seeing is the consequence of millions and millions of individual myosin heads doing power strokes all in the same direction. Okay? It does the power stroke, and then it's going to release the inorganic phosphate and release the ADP molecule. Okay? All right. So that has happened. We bound, formed a cross bridge, we did a power stroke, now it's just the myosin molecule, no ATP, no ADP, no inorganic phosphate attached whatsoever. Okay? What happens next is probably going to seem like one of the most backwards things in all of physiology. Okay? To me, it does not make much intuitive sense. Okay? But this is just the way that it is. So what has happened is I bound, I did a power stroke. Now that's moved the muscle like just these tiny, tiny, tiny little amounts. Like you can't even see how much the muscle will have moved based upon one power stroke. So what needs to happen then is we need to detach the myosin from the actin, okay? Tilt or pivot the head back to its original state and allow it to bind again, and then power stroke again, and relax, and go back, and bind, and again, okay? Because this has to happen many, 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 many times to pull the actin far enough that we can get some sort of noticeable movement in the muscle, okay? So, the thing that to me is very backwards is how or what the signal is to break the cross bridge apart, okay? So we have actin and myosin bound together, and what is the signal that breaks them apart is going to be the binding of ATP into the myosin head, okay? So we bring in ATP, it binds, that tells the myosin to let go. Okay? Then there's an enzyme in the myosin head called the ATPase, which is one of the things that determines our fiber types. Okay? Then the ATPase enzyme is going to catalyze or break down ATP into ADP and one molecule of inorganic phosphate, so it's peeling a phosphate off. Okay? And that is going to then be the signal to pivot the myosin head back to its kind of high energy conformation so that we can start this whole process over. Okay? So, the thing that is backwards to me, right? When you contract your muscles, you're not using energy to do the contraction. You're actually using energy to relax the contraction, to shut the contraction off. Okay? This is why running downhill is much easier metabolically than running on level ground or running uphill. Okay? I will do some more demonstrations of this in a little bit. But this, to me, this is the whole key thing. Okay? So, I have to use energy to allow the cross bridge to be broken so I can then reattach it and do more power strokes. Okay? So, the more power strokes that I need to do, the heavier the weight I'm lifting, more power strokes. The faster I'm running, more power strokes, okay? So the higher the intensity of exercise, the more power strokes required, therefore the more times we have to break our cross bridges, consequently then, the more energy that we're going to use, okay? And remember that we use energy used during exercise to quantify intensity of physical activity. Okay? So, y'all can get a good laugh at me today. 5 pounds, right? I'm lifting up, I'm curling up 5 pounds, right? That requires a certain number of cross bridges to be bound, a certain number of power strokes to happen in my bicep, to allow me to generate enough force to pick this up. Okay? that costs me some certain amount of energy, right? Because I'm having to brake in order to keep going. At 10 pounds, okay, I'm going to need maybe double, who knows, okay? I'm going to need necessarily more and more cross bridges to be formed in order to allow me to pick up the 10 pounds, which then means if I've got double the cross bridges that need to be formed in order to move it, that's double the number that have to get broken in order to allow me to continue. So I'm using twice the energy to lift 10 pounds than I was to lift 5. That's just for illustrative purposes. It's not actually double, okay? That's, you guys follow kind of where I'm going with all this, okay? As we will see, the amount of energy that you use during a contraction drives the increase in breathing. It drives your increase in the cardiovascular system function. So the increased energy use makes heart rate go up, it makes stroke volume go up, and makes cardiac output go up. Okay? The amount of energy used during a contraction or during a bout of exercise drives the training adaptations. It drives the synthesis of new mitochondria, of new blood vessels. Okay? All of these things are going to derive out of this. Okay? So, this is why, to me, this process is the key underpinning of all of exercise physiology. We can trace, in some ways, everything back to this. Okay? Now, I'm biased. I'm a muscle guy, so I think this is the most important thing. But this is kind of how I want you guys to fit everything together, because we're going to talk about training and training adaptations to lifting weights next week. Okay? It's going to come back to this. Right? Anybody have questions about that? Are you guys okay? This will show up on the test. Okay? You may have to draw it. You will certainly have to know the steps, and you will certainly have to know where we use ATP, what's the state of ADP and inorganic phosphate at each one of those kinds of steps. Okay? This is really, 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 really important. Okay? All right. Now comes the fun part. Okay? Now we're going to take the things that we've learned about muscles and their structure, the things we've learned about the central nervous system and how they connect to those muscles, and we're going to put them together to generate movement. Okay? So here come the fun things. Let me see if I can I get a volunteer? You're only going to have to lift 5 pounds. Can I get a volunteer? I will pick someone. Anybody want to volunteer? No? Nick, you'll do it? Okay. So Nick, I'm just going to set this over here. All I want you to do with that 5 pounds is do 1 curl. Okay? Everybody watching it, doing 1 curl. Awesome. You may set it down and just hang tight. Here's my question. How much force does he have to generate in his bicep in order to lift up that 5 pound weight? I promise you it's not a trick question. Five. Okay? So have any other takers for 5? Sarah, you're a taker for 5? Okay. Are the rest of you not sure? Liz, what do you think? You at 5? More than 5? Less than 5? You think 5? Okay. Leah, what about you? Also 5? Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in? Nick, how much do you think? Probably the same. 5? we're gonna assume, although I don't want you to take this as a slight to your arm or how big your arms are or anything, but we're just gonna assume we're not gonna account for the weight of the arm, which we would normally need to. Okay, 5 pounds. All right, I'm gonna do something, and I'm gonna have Nick generate exactly 5 pounds in his bicep. Nick, pick the weight up and hold it right like this. There is Nick generating exactly, assuming the weight weighs 5 pounds, that is generating 5 pounds with his bicep. What is the weight doing? It's stationary. Why, when he generates 5 pounds, is the weight stationary? Rachel, what do you think? Why is it stationary? Okay, sure. I mean, how many of you have had physics? Anybody had physics? Okay. Do you have PTSD from physics? It's okay, right? My roommate in college was a physics major. Okay, Nick, you can set it down for just a second, okay? My roommate in college was a physics major. He's now an engineer and those kinds of things. And physics 1 I was fine with because the trig and stuff made sense to me. It's physics 2, electricity, magnets, and that shit is crazy. Okay. You guys remember something, right? Why does the weight weigh 5 pounds? It's physics. Why does it weigh 5 pounds? If we took it to the moon, would it weigh 5 pounds? So you're saying no. Why not? Gravity. Very good, okay? Who knows what gravity is? 9.81 meters per second or whatever it is, right? So, okay. It weighs 5 pounds because of gravity, also because of something. Mass. Very good. Okay. So, in order to move it, and we're going to talk about Newton's laws of motion, right? In order to move it, we have to start it slightly more than 5 pounds. But to hold it right there, if the force he is applying is exactly equal to the force that gravity is applying, pulling it down, guess what happens? Nada. The equation's balanced, right? So, if we assume it weighs 5 pounds, when he holds it, he's generating 5 pounds of force because it's actually not going anywhere. So, let's try again. Nick, do one curl for me. Okay, you may now set it down. So when he moves it and it comes up, how much force is his bicep generating? If it's not 5 pounds, what is it? Give me a rough approximation. Emily, do you have any thoughts? What do you think? You don't know? Okay. So it's going away from the pull of gravity, right? And so if gravity is exerting 5 pounds of force on it trying to pull it down, if I want it to go up, I need to generate 5 pounds plus what? Just some little small amount, right? Okay. So when we talk about force production, when we talk about movement, we need to start here, okay? Whenever you move your body, whenever you lift weights, okay, in order for there to be movement, you have to generate just enough force to overcome gravity, okay? So if we take you and we put you on the moon, and you're just as strong on the moon as you are here, then it's much easier to walk. It's much easier to lift weights there because your muscles can generate just as much force. Okay? So that's going to be my lead into this. Okay? If Nick knows that he needs to generate just a tiny fraction more than 5 pounds to pick up the weight, okay, we could then have asked him to probably pick up 10 pounds, and he picks up the 10 pounds where he generates just slightly more than 10, okay, or 15, or, some other amount. How does his body know? How does his brain tell his muscles to generate just that amount of force, but no more. Okay? Because guess what happens if Nick picks up the 5-pound weight, and rather than generating like 5.00001, okay, newtons of force, he generates 30. Throws it behind himself, right? Way more force than he needs, and then the movement is going to be very, very much not controlled and perhaps not what he wants it to. So, the way that we control all of this is the brain is going to tell the motor neurons in the spinal cord to fire one at a time, okay? And that may seem strange to you guys because it's going to tell them to fire one at a time, but it's one at a time. It's not like 1, 2, 3. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's really, really kind of right on top of each other, okay? And it's going to tell those motor neurons to fire, which are then going to cause a certain number of muscle fibers to get turned on because they're part of that motor unit, okay? And it's going to turn them on, and it's going to keep increasing the number of motor neurons that are active until we get just the right precise amount of force that we need for a given activity. Okay? This process of the brain turning on the motor neurons and then the motor neurons turning on the muscle fibers that are connected to it is called motor unit recruitment or motor unit activation. Okay? So when you need to generate force, you have to recruit enough muscle to do that. Okay? Now, I am not particularly strong at this one point in my existence, okay? But I don't have to use all of my bicep to pick up the 5 pounds. And so let's say I need 20 motor neurons to get turned on, to get enough of my muscle turned on to pick up 5, okay? Then I need another 20 to go to 10, and another 20 to go to 15, and so on and so forth. At some point, we will reach a maximum. At some point, there are no more motor neurons to recruit. There's no more of your muscle to turn on because everything is on. And once everything is on, guess what you don't get anymore? There's no more force. Okay? So, one of the things that determines what your maximal strength is going to be the size of your muscle and your ability to recruit the motor neurons to turn that muscle on. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that at least that initial portion of kind of the on or off make sense? I'll get some nods of heads, yes, no, maybe. It's about to get a little more complicated. And if we don't get this, then the next little piece is really going to throw some of you guys for a loop. Okay? So we're okay? My Zoom people, we okay? All right, so there's a comment. Let's see if we have a question. Yes, okay. People said they're good. All right. So the next thing to consider, let me see if I've got the correct thing in here, is there is a specific order, okay, in which we turn on the motor units, okay? There's a plan for all of this. If you remember back from Monday, we talked about that there are different kinds of motor units based upon the muscle fiber types, okay? So that all of the muscle fibers in a motor unit have the same fiber type. There are also different sizes. So each motor unit one motor neuron may connect to a different number of muscle fibers. So we have some that are very small, that have very few muscle fibers, some that are very, very big and connect to a bunch, okay? Well, the way that this tends to go is small, in every muscle in your body, small motor units. So motor units that connect motor neuron to a very few number of fibers tend to be type 1 or slow twitch muscle fibers, okay? And then they're going to kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger. They're going to get more and more fibers. And we're going to migrate then into the type 2A fibers, and then we're going to migrate. Our biggest motor units are going to be the type 2 connected type 2X fibers. So type 1 or slow twitch muscle fibers are quite resistant to fatigue. They're good for endurance. Okay? Type 2X fibers tend to be very, very fatigable. Okay? Very fatigable. So when we turn a muscle on, every time you do a contraction, the first motor units that are recruited are going to be the small motor units that connect to slow twitch muscle fibers. Okay? So I pick up 5 pounds, boom, I've done those. I've probably only recruited these very small slow twitch motor units to be able to do that. That means I can do this quite a few times, okay, before I'm metabolically fatigued. And so the way this works then is, as I need, you can say this is maximal strength. You can say that this is VO2 max, which is your maximal capacity to say run or something. As I get closer and closer to max, okay, I must turn on or recruit more and more muscle fibers. And so it's going to migrate my way where at a given contraction intensity, I may recruit all of my type 1s and then some type 2, okay? Maybe I recruit all of my type 1s and almost all of my type 2As. And then if I want to do a maximal contraction, I may recruit all of these and then some of my type 2X fibers. Okay? So there's this very nice order. This order is called the Henneman size principle of motor unit recruitment. Okay? And if you need something to help you fall asleep tonight, I will send you the paper where they outline what all of this means and how they got it, and I swear to you it will put you asleep within 5 minutes. Okay? But this is called the Henneman size principle of motor unit recruitment. So, every time I do a contraction, right? Every time I walk, every time I talk, every time y'all are typing, if it's a low force contraction, you're always kind of running in these areas here, okay? And they're going over and over and over again. And when you need more force, you get these plus some additional ones. The brain is really good, okay? You have learned from the time you were basically able to pick your head up. The brain learns you're really good at turning on just the right number of motor neurons and recruiting just the right number of muscle fibers to generate exactly the precise amount of force that you need. Okay? You're really good at that. And there's a lot of complex kind of feedback loops and things that are going to play in there, but you're really good. Right? Every time you get ready to perform an action, the brain guesses. You guys ever picked up a box that you thought was going to be really heavy? And there actually was nothing in there, right? And you go down, you're like, I'm going to get this. And you're like, whoa, you fling over backwards. Your brain was guessing, I need to recruit a bunch of muscle fibers to pick up this heavy-ass box. And then as it turns out, the box was really light. And so you generated way more force than you needed to. It's made a wrong calculation, okay? And then as soon as you start kind of flying backwards, the brain begins to receive input from the periphery, and it immediately begins trying to adjust how much force it needs and trying to help you adjust your posture and where your arms and legs are going so you don't fall over on your butt, okay? The brain's really good at this. It's really, really good, okay? Anytime you learn to do a new activity, riding a bike, performing a new kind of weight, like a new kind of lift, right? There's probably some of you that are in here that have never done a power clean before, right? Anybody not done a power clean? You've all done power cleans? Emily, no power cleans? Perfect. We could try to teach Emily to do a power clean. We could watch her try to do one to start with, and she would not be very good. Her form wouldn't be very good. But she comes back tomorrow and we try again, she'll be better tomorrow because her brain remembers which muscles, which motor units when, and at what force level, okay? So when you learn to be more coordinated, what's actually happening is the brain is learning and remembering which motor units to turn on, how much force do you need, okay, at what particular moment in time. So things like walking, where you're using hundreds of muscles simultaneously. The brain must send signals to all of those muscles at the same time to generate exactly the right amount of force to help you walk, okay? That's a pretty astounding thing to me, that we learn how to do, kind of what we learn to be able to do. That's how this happens, okay? Questions? Yes, Emily? Yes. Yes, absolutely, there are neurodegenerative diseases that would affect that. Parkinson's affects this. Multiple sclerosis affects this. There are things that may be on the muscle side of things that are going to be down there, muscular dystrophy and things like that. Okay. If you've had a stroke and it has affected the motor cortex, or it's affected part of the sensory cortices that send feedback information into the motor cortex to help it regulate what it's doing, right? Then you can't do things. So yes, absolutely. Any of you that want to be occupational therapists, that want to be physical therapists, when we do rehabilitation, a lot of what we're doing in some instances is we are retraining the nervous system to recruit motor neurons, okay, in the right order, in the right time. Any of you that have ever tried to coach somebody to do something or learn a new skill in sports, in dance, something like that, where you have to move yourself around. When you're learning a new skill, you have to, what you're learning is, how do I get my nervous system to contract the right muscles at the right amount of force at the right instant? Okay? I could take everybody, okay, and I could have you all do curls today. We could figure out like some amount of curls that would be a useful training stimulus for you. And for those of you that don't normally do curls, okay, don't normally curl, which is probably the ladies. I don't want to pick on you guys, but you know, y'all will be stronger tomorrow, and you'll be stronger on Friday, because your brain will have learned by what you did today to be better at turning on the motor units you already have. Okay? Tomorrow, you get really good, really fast at these kinds of things. So there's lots of ability to train that in the system. Okay? So you have to have the muscle that has the actin and myosin that generate the force, but we also have to be able to have our brain turn it on to make use of those actin and myosin. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? We can try to come up with some more, scenarios and more kind of visual things right now if we need to, but are we okay? No? All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's take a 5-minute break, or 6 minutes. Let's come back at 12:10. We will resume. Okay? Okay. Let's do another demonstration. Okay? May I have another volunteer? What if the alternative was everybody does squats until we get a volunteer? Does that give me a volunteer? All right. My bluff works. Okay, over here, please. Here's what I want you to do. Okay? The next thing that we're going to talk about is that in the context of how much muscle do you have and how good is your nervous system at turning that muscle on, is we need to contextualize once you actually start moving. Okay? There are going to be a few other things that play a role in how strong you are Okay, and that impacts kind of what your movements are. All right, so 5 pound weight, please. Okay, we've got said 5 pound weight. Now, for everyone, I want you to curl, okay, as fast as you can. Do 10 reps as fast as you can, all right? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Stop. Okay. Shoot, we should have timed it. That's okay. All right? Now we're going to set down the 5 pounds. Now we're going to do your other arm, but I want you to get 15 pounds. 15 pound dumbbell.
Oh, that's 15.
With your right arm, so we kind of may have done something like that. Get you with your right arm, get to 15 pound dumbbell. Okay? Now, I want you, and you guys are going to judge. Right arm, I want you to try to go as fast as you can. Okay? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Stop. Anybody find that? In y'all's opinion, what do you think? Which one was faster? Was one faster? Are they about the same? Megan, what do you think? Which one was faster? In your mind. They were both kind of okay. You know what this means? We got to try again. Okay? So we'll do this, a vote by a show of hands. How many of you think that there was no difference between you? Okay. How many of you think the 5 pound weight was faster than the 15? Okay. How many of you think the 15 was faster than the 5? How many of you just want me to shut up so you can go to lunch? Okay. All right. Now, we did 15. How do you feel about, let's try 20.
20 pounds?
20 pounds. Right? Okay. Are you ready?
Right arm?
Doesn't matter, whichever arm you want to do. Okay? Let's just do 5 reps. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, thank you. What do we think about that? In comparison to the 5 pound weight. Slower, okay? Pretty sure that was slower? What do you guys would think would happen if I kept giving him heavier and heavier weights? What if we gave him 25 pounds or the 30 pounds, right? We might eventually reach enough weight that he couldn't pick it up, okay? So what I want to illustrate for you guys, or what I hope is illustrated from this, is lifting light weight, lifting a weight that is a fraction of your maximal capacity. You can move that weight much, much faster than you can move an amount of weight that is very near your max, okay? So what you see here is the idea of contraction velocity, so the speed of contraction as it relates to how much force the muscle is producing. This relationship here, okay, this is from a paper that was published in 1950, all right? If you take exercise physiology lab with Dr. Pereira, you guys will do just what I did, but you'll do it back on this kind of crazy robot contraption machine back there behind you, and you will build your own. It's called a force velocity curve, but it's how fast can you go at a given amount of force production. And so what this shows is force production is here, velocity is here, so when velocity is high, force is very, very low, okay? When force is high, velocity is very, very low, okay? And that's the general take on all of this, okay? The faster we go, the less force you're able to generate, okay? Now, I could take 10 minutes and try to explain to you guys kind of all the hows and the whys of all of that and how that relates to cross-bridge dynamics and some other things, but it's not really that important right now. Dr. Mike will do that in exercise physiology class, okay? But what I want you to know is the faster you need to move something. So if you need to sprint, okay, the faster you want to go, the less force you're out of as a percentage of your total maximum that you can actually generate. So that's why sprinters need to be really strong. They also need to be as small in some ways as possible. They kind of have to balance those two things. If that means then they're generating a smaller percentage of their max, therefore it lets them go a little bit faster. Okay. Now, what I told you guys, what you see here, only holds for one kind of contraction. Okay. Now, in anatomy, did you guys talk about concentric and isometric and eccentric muscle contractions? Did you guys go through all of those things? Nick's on his head, Sarah's on your head. Sarah, do you remember what a concentric contraction is? Or like what's happening in the muscle during a concentric contraction? You remember the words, but you remember what it was. Okay, not a big deal. Okay, so there are three general classifications of muscle contractions: concentric, eccentric, and isometric. During a concentric contraction, okay, concentric, the muscle is going to shorten. The sarcomeres are pulling together, the muscle shortens. So what do we do with my 5-pound weight? Okay. So in my bicep, right, the bicep when it shortens is going to pull my arm up. So during the up phase here, this is a concentric contraction. This force-velocity relationship, okay, where high velocity yields low force, works for concentric contractions. We don't care what happens during isometric contractions, because isometric contractions are contractions where the muscle does not move. Okay, here, when we had Nick just hold, okay, this is an isometric contraction. I'm holding a weight static. An isometric contraction could also be me pushing on the wall, but the wall's not going to let me move. Okay? Those are isometric. Because there's no movement during an isometric contraction, there's no velocity. Okay? There's no velocity. Because of that, if we were to graph these things out, an isometric contraction happens right here. At zero velocity, there's no movement. That's going to be an isometric contraction. In most people, you can, with a given muscle, you can generate more force isometrically than you can for movement, which for y'all's purpose means, you see what I'm feeling today? Okay, 30 pounds. I can hold the 30 pounds, not a problem. Okay, let's see if I can actually lift it. Ah, crap. Okay. So if we had bigger dumbbells, we would reach a place where there's an amount of weight that I can curl, and I can't, at some point I won't be able to pick it up. But if you gave it to me and you just let me hold it here, I can hold it even though I can't actually pick it up and move it. Does that make sense? Okay. So, okay. Now for the other kind of muscle contraction, for an eccentric contraction. An eccentric contraction, the muscle is lengthening or stretching out, okay, during the contraction. So going back to the lightweight, because my arm hurts. The eccentric contraction is with my bicep when I do this, when I lower the weight back down. That's an eccentric contraction. Okay? How much force am I generating when I'm lowering 5 pounds down? Less than 5. Very good. Just slightly less than 5. Okay? If I want to generate basically none, I can just drop it. Okay? So, during eccentric contractions, you form a cross bridge. Myosin binds to actin, and then it doesn't have to break off. Okay? It just hangs on. It just hangs on. And you get stretched back out like all of that. Because the cross bridge never has to break, There's no real component for velocity in there. So eccentric contractions tend to be independent. Force is independent of contraction velocity. So while the more weight I pick up, the slower it goes, I can lower them back down at about the same rate, no matter how heavy the weight is. Okay? No matter how heavy the weight is. Okay. Questions about it? That's velocity. Okay. That's velocity. If I want to go faster, I'm going to generate less force. Okay. That's adaptations to resistance training. 12:24. Okay, we got a little bit of time. Anybody have any other questions about how we go about generating force with our muscles? Why you can lift a certain amount of things? That's good. Okay. So the next little bit of stuff that we're going to do, we are going to talk about what happens, okay? What happens when I perform resistance training with my muscles, okay? This is going to get us into the idea of muscular fitness, okay? Muscular fitness. The maximal amount of force that a muscle or a muscle group can generate is one of our measures of muscular fitness, okay? So we're not going to tie how much actin and myosin do we have in our muscles. That plays a role in how much strength we have, how good our brain is at telling our motor neurons to turn on that muscle that we have. That plays a role in our maximal strength, okay? So those things are going to be a part of how fit your muscles are. There's some anatomy and physiology that determines fitness. Okay? So what happens when we have my dude bro here, right? Who, you know, even our cadavers want to get some gains in and want to do some bench press. Right? What's going to happen when we do resistance training? So, show of hands, how many of you have done resistance training before? Consistently, not like I went and I did it once. Like how many of you have done it consistently? Okay, so about 2/3 of you guys. Okay, so let's do this. We'll make a little list of things. All right, let me see my hands again. Who's done it? Okay, so we'll start like this. Taylor, when you did your resistance training, did anything happen? You feel like anything happened? Like it changed anything? Okay. So your muscles get bigger, smaller, more defined. Ooh, okay. That's tough. You got muscle definition. You said that you got stronger. As noted that you could lift your weights. Okay. Who else? Liz, you had your hand up. Yes. Anything else on your end that you felt like changed or that you noticed? You felt like yours got bigger. Okay. So we get bigger muscles. Okay. Anything else? Out of the rest of you, did you experience anything else? Bigger muscles, stronger muscles. Any of you get stronger without getting bigger muscles? You got faster. Ooh, okay. And when you say faster, like you can run faster? Okay. Running on here. Good. Interesting. Anybody else? You can go for long. Could do more reps. Okay. So I could do more reps. Okay. Anybody see any other changes? So here's my question. Everything that you guys came up with, that you guys have seen, those are all real, right? Those are things that will happen. My question is why? Why does that happen? How does that happen? Okay? So, how do we get bigger muscles? Liz thought that her muscles got bigger. So how do we get bigger muscles? And as a secondary question, how much bigger can our muscles get? Liz, how much bigger did your muscles get, if you don't mind me asking? You can tell me to, go jump in the lake that I'm asking too many questions. That's okay. A little? But like you felt like it was noticeable. Like you could see that they were bigger. Okay? But you didn't all of a sudden become like The Rock or anything. Okay? Anybody else? So let's start. How do muscles get bigger? Chandler, I'm sorry? Stimulus. What's a stimulus? Resistance. What's resistance? Weight. Weight opposed. So I lift the weights and that provides a stimulus. That may be the initial thing, but like what has to happen in the muscle to make the muscle get bigger? Tears? Damage? Increasing the fiber. So when the muscle gets bigger, the diameter does get bigger. Yes, that's right. Good, Chandler. Emily, you were saying protein growth. Okay? To have a bigger muscle, what are muscles made up of? Protein and... You not talk about this? Your body is mostly what? Water, much like the earth. Okay? Protein and water. Okay? Now, if you want me to, I can jam some water into your muscles and you'll look like you're getting real big. And then it will all like normalize back out and then shrink right back down. Okay? That's the thing when we go to the gym and we'll say all the bros. Okay? Remember, bro is a neutral term. The folks look in the mirror, they're like, yeah, man, I got that. Look at this. Look at my crunches. Look at my abs. And then they go home 20 minutes later, like, wait, where did my biceps go? Right? They're all gone. Water's gone. Okay? So, to make muscles bigger, I need more protein. Okay? I need them to make more protein. Okay? They must make more actin and myosin. And yes, Nick is right. We need a stimulus to cause that to happen. When we add actin and myosin, that will make, as Chandler pointed out, that will make each individual fiber diameter get bigger. That's right. Okay? So, how do we make protein in any cell? You guys know? How do we make protein? Kayla, you have any ideas? There's a process.
Amino acids.
We need amino acids. Good. Yes. We have to have some kind of a signal, though, to tell those amino acids to get put together in a particular order to make the actin and myosin. Where might that signal come from? What part of the muscle fiber? What part of any cell is going to be the thing? The nucleus. Very good. Okay? So to make muscles get bigger, which is one of the training adaptations, we need to turn on the nucleus, or those many nuclei in our individual muscle fibers, and have them make messenger RNA. So it's going to say make actin, make myosin. That messenger RNA goes to ribosomes, and then it grabs some amino acids, and we start making some new stuff. Okay? And it puts them together, boom, 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 boom. Okay? And eventually then, over some period of time, we're going to do that. So, and we'll talk about this next week when we get into how we train and why we train certain ways. But that's the underlying process. And so what we need to do when we exercise, when we do resistance training, is we need to consistently, like day after day after day, for a significant period of time, okay, we need to provide a signal that tells the nucleus of those muscle fibers to turn on and make messenger RNA to make more actin and myosin. So that then the muscle will grow. So what we're going to have to deal with next week is, well, how the hell do we do that, right? What's the actual signal during a bout of exercise that will turn on that nucleus, okay? Now I can tell you guys that if you want to cheat that process, all you have to do is take steroids. We could probably go to any number of the various gyms here in Norman and get you guys some anabolic steroids if you want. I may not know a guy, but I bet I know a guy that knows a guy that could get us some, get us some growth hormone. It could get us Winstrol, which is actually a horse steroid, but it can do those things. Anabolic hormones drive the nucleus to make those kinds of things. So we do create something that let us do that. Okay, so we're going to get bigger muscles. That's good. Another consequence is we could get stronger, which we do. We actually get stronger. How much stronger can we get? Any of you guys that when you started lifting, how much stronger? Do you remember? Like if I start off being able to lift, say, 20 pounds, okay, and that's all I can do. How much at some point am I going to be able to lift? How much stronger? A little bit? A lot? Somewhere in the middle? What do you think? Lauren, you have any ideas? It will be gradual. That's absolutely right. Okay, sure. Okay, it is going to vary from person to person. Okay, that's right. So, if I want to get stronger, okay, there's a couple of ways that I could get stronger. Let's talk about what those might be. Okay, so let's just guess. Okay, what I'm interested in is to increase the force production or the increase of strength. And the question is, how do we do that? What we need to understand are the answer to this question. What determines strength? If we know the answer to that, we can probably work out from there what may change and what may make me stronger. Okay? So let's start with this. Where does force come from? What in the muscle produces force? Actin and myosin. When they form what that we talked about at the start today? Cross bridges, okay? Strength is directly related to cross bridges. Okay? More actin and myosin, more cross bridges. Okay? Big person, small person. Who has more cross bridges? Big person, okay? Or think of it this way. Muscles that control my fingers, quad muscles. Where are there more cross bridges? Quads, right? That's why you can squat a whole lot more than you can, like move with your index finger, okay? There's a history of doing experiments in neuromuscular physiology where they measure things in, it's called the first dorsal interosseous muscle. Y'all gonna be amazed I know where that is since I've never had an anatomy, but it's this muscle that's right here and it controls whatever that is. Index finger, is that abduction or adduction? I don't know, one of those two things. It does this. So you like put something here and you press against it as hard as you can. And so we know a lot about things that happen like in the finger muscles. But big muscle, more cross bridges. Okay? So what determines strength? Cross bridges. So muscle size, okay? Muscle size plays one important role, strength. Okay? A person with a bigger muscle potentially has a greater capacity to form cross bridges and therefore has a greater capacity to generate force and have strength. Okay? Now there's a caveat to that. Okay? And Lauren was getting at that a little bit just a second ago. You guys probably can think of, okay, issues or instances when you have one friend that is big and a friend that is not so big, and the not so big person is actually stronger than the bigger person. Okay? So, if I need muscle and I need cross bridges, what do I also have to be able to do with that muscle in order to get it to generate force? Leah, any ideas? That's right, sure. So you're grabbing your arm right here, right? Like, how are you doing that? Like, what's happening? How's that process occurring? Yes. Yes, your brain. Are you doing this as hard as you possibly could? No, right? So your brain could tell the muscles doing that to turn on more of the muscle, right? So strength is this combination of cross bridges and muscle size and recruitment, okay? So it's not just how big your muscle is, but can you actually turn it on? It doesn't do you any good to have these great big giant muscles if your brain does not know how to turn them on and engage them, okay? And so when we do resistance training, we can change both of those things. We can not only make our muscles bigger, we can also train the brain to be better at recruiting or turning on whatever muscle we actually have at that exact moment. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? Any of you that did resistance training, my guess is when you started training, you got stronger pretty quickly, but you did not immediately get bigger muscles. It took a little while for your muscles to get bigger, yet you got stronger almost immediately. Okay? And so what you're experiencing in that instance is your brain learns to recruit when it's doing this resistance training very, very quickly, very early on. That goes for the first part. Then we're going to begin to kick in some increases in muscle size. Okay? And then those two things are going to kind of play off of each other as we move along. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? I'm not getting a lot of positive feedback that you guys got it. If there's a question, now is the time. We're going to probably go ahead at this point. We'll probably call things here. Okay? So we'll pick up at this point for next week. Now, here's what I want you guys to do. Okay? Here's what I want you guys to do for next week. For all my people on the Zoom, okay? Are you with me? Do you hear me? Here's our assignment for next Monday. I want you to go and I want you to Google, okay? I want you to Google how big can resistance training make my muscles? And I want you to try to get an answer for that point, okay? You are not, under any circumstances, though, allowed to use an actual scientific article, no real science, only bro science, No real scientific article where we've tested this, okay? Because what I want to try to illustrate is, let's see what's out there in the popular press. Let's see what's out there on Reddit or someplace on what are people saying. Like, bro, I can get, this much bigger, okay? Do that, and you're going to bring that with you to class on Monday, all right? You will turn it in to me on Monday for an assignment, okay? All right. Very good. I know it's Wednesday, but guys, thanks. Have a good weekend. Make good choices, whatever that encompasses.